The 2026 draft is fast approaching, and there are a lot of hitters in the country that are standing out. But these three in particular are ones that we're going to break down from a film perspective and look at maybe some things that they've changed in 2026 that is going to make them a lot of money in the 2026 draft. The first player that has broken out to a certain extent, but really it's been more of a rise. He came into the year as a top 10 prospect as a catcher that could do multiple things and was very athletic, is Vahn Lackey, the catcher out of Georgia Tech. When looking at Vahn Lackey and his data and specifically his breakdown, a couple things that stand out to me from the 2025 stats is high contact, pretty good plate discipline, could be a little bit better, and good enough hard hit and barrel percentages. There was a little bit to be desired there in terms of how hard he hits the ball and how hard he specifically hits it in the air, but it was enough to warrant a top 10 pick from a catcher. Makes a ton of contact. That's pretty impressive bat to ball skills. 85% in the ACC is definitely top 10 worthy. But there was a little bit to be desired in the other avenues that might have limited his potential as a pro prospect. Well, big change for him was obviously just the impact overall. He's a strong physical kid, so the bat speed was always there in 2025. He's just getting to it more frequently, quite frankly. Obviously, the average exit velocity is up by almost 3 full miles per hour. The chase percentage is actually down, which is super impressive for a guy that's tapped into a little bit more power. The chase percentage going down is a really good add on to that. He's obviously seeing the ball a lot better. And then the hard hit percentage and the barrel percentages are up big time. So obviously you would say the hard hit percentage going up is a direct correlation with the average exit velocity. That's not always the case, but he's just getting to hard contact more frequently. And when he's getting to that hard contact, it's specifically in the air. We're going to break down a couple of the subtle changes that he's made that I think has improved his bat speed. But the reality is a lot of it's just natural maturity, strength, and being able to understand what you're trying to do as a hitter, which is kind of what it shows in terms of his offseason changes. Again, from a mechanical standpoint, which we're going to break down in a second here, there's not a ton of changes. It's just a little bit more confidence in being able to get the ball off the ground and being able to get the ball in the air and trust that it's going to be hit hard enough to get out of the ballpark. A lot of young hitters, especially ones in high school, they're afraid to hit the ball in the air because flyouts are outs. And really in the private sector, I think that's a reality of the world we live in, is that so many young hitters want to chase flyouts and they're not strong enough to hit a ball 350 to 450 feet, right? And that's even just sneaking one down the line at 350 feet. So a lot of young hitters have to break that habit as they get closer to professional baseball and tapping into their real grown man strength and just trusting it. And you can obviously see that the line drive percentage stays the same, which for a guy that has hit for as high of average as Lackey typically has over his career, that's not a surprise that he was already in a pretty good category for that. But every ounce of his ground ball percentage has basically flipped. The 6% decrease in ground ball percentage has gone into fly ball percentage. And you might ask yourself, why is fly ball percentage still more than 6% of the decrease? That's because pop-up percentage is down. When you want to look at a way to waste batted balls, pop-up percentage. So even for a high contact percentage guy, if you're popping the ball up, so infield, shallow outfield, that above 45 degrees in the air launch angle, you're probably not going to be pretty productive. Those have about a sub 50, 0.50 batting average. So not only is he taking all of his ground balls, having them be translated to fly balls, he's also decreasing his pop-up percentage, which is getting him in that window of, let's just say, 10 to 35 degrees, which is our power paradise for hitters, and specifically getting there with 55%, 56% frequency, which is super impressive. And then the rest basically goes to ground ball. So his pop-up percentage has gone to basically zero. So everything is in a window where it's hit hard enough in the air. And obviously we see the exit velocity increase. When he's hitting the ball in that window, it's up a little bit, which has directly translated to the power output, right? I didn't mention this. I probably should have mentioned this earlier. In 2025, Vahn Lackey hit 6 home runs total. In 2026 alone already, through 20 plus games, he has 9. He has 40 more games to push 20 home runs. So you're seeing a large increase in those specifically. He's also pulling the ball just a little bit more, and specifically not pulling the ball on the ground, right? Pull percentage is one thing. So 37 versus 42, pretty similar in terms of the ranges for outcomes. But when 58% of that 37 is on the ground, and now when 45% of that 42 is on the ground, that's a huge difference. And then you look at the pulled fly ball, 29% compared to 12.3%. When we look at pulled air and pull fly ball and all of those factors, why is that important? The reason why is because when we look at the dimensions of a baseball field, especially at the Division I and professional baseball, it's typically 330 to center. It's typically 400 or 330 to left. It's typically 400 to center. And then obviously 330 to right. For guys that aren't these freak Aaron Judge size, Mike Trout size, Bryce Harper bat speed level guys, it's very hard for them to tap into power without pulling the baseball, because to pull a home run, you only have to hit it 340. To hit a home run out to center, you have to hit it 405. That takes a different level of what we would call the engine, the bat speed, the raw power, all of those tools that we talk about. So if Lackey can get to the air on the pull side and not have to overwhelm with elite tools and bat speed and do that consistently, it's going to lead to an increase of power output, and it leads to a lot of success at the next level. That's a guy like Alex Bregman, where on a tool standpoint, an average exit velocity standpoint, all of these factors, he's not going to wow you, but in a production standpoint, he consistently wows you. What Lackey's been able to do is combine also improved metrics, right? His contact rate is elite. His exit velocity is up there with the best in the country. He's hitting the ball hard. He's barreling the baseball. But now he's getting to the pull side and doing that with a form of consistency. So let's get into the film a little bit and look at maybe some of the changes he's made mechanically that's allowing him to tap into that pull side power more consistently. So as we look at Lackey's film breakdown here on the screen, on the right, we have a home run in 2025 against a high-level pitcher, and then a home run in 2026. There's a couple differences. Obviously, camera angle matters from when we're talking about setup. So I don't want to say anything like, oh, he's deeper in his legs, he's using his legs more. Those kind of identifications that just quite frankly, from this could be a low camera in center field at Stanford, and this could be a high camera at home at Georgia Tech, and he could have the same exact setup. So we're not going to talk about setup, even though it does look a little bit different. And it does look like he is in his legs, at least in a different way. I wouldn't say more. It looks like he's more sitting down in 2025. He looks like he's actually using his legs and engaged in his legs in 2026. That's just an assumption, and it could be an angle. An obvious thing to point out, and you're going to hear this with a couple of the guys we're going to break down today, he's bigger. His legs are bigger. Either he got his pants tailored or his legs are bigger, just flat out. He's stronger, which again, looking at the data, that makes a lot of sense. So let's run through his 2025 home run. A couple of things. That gets out. That's strong. That's hit low, right? So that's something that we're talking about where his window, that's the window we're talking about that he's in consistently. But for a home run standpoint, that's still pretty low, and it takes real grown man strength to get that out to left center field at a park like Stanford, or quite frankly, any professional park with wood, right? So a couple things. He's kind of more of a toe tap guy in 2025. You can kind of see when it comes to engaging his legs, it's more of what I would call a turn and a lean, right? There's no actual hinge into that back leg. He's trying, and there's definitely an effort to transfer that energy into the back leg, but it's more of just like a toe tap, get my foot down and make a ton of contact is kind of what it seems like his goal is. And if he gets the head out and makes barrel contact, he's going to do damage because he's a really strong guy. Let's look at the 2026. The obvious adjustment is the leg kick and the hand rhythm. He is getting himself into what Josh Donaldson got famous for talking about a long time ago, is that rhythm of almost like that contract the rubber band, and then you're going to see him expand as he gets that load engaged and starts to release. That is going to increase his power output and his rubber band effect of creating more bat speed. So alone, we're talking about that hand load and he definitely is bringing that leg kick up compared to no hand load, right? No rhythm. It comes up a little bit, but not as exaggerated as what he's doing in 2026. And obviously, no leg kick is kind of just stagnating him, right? I always like to imagine hitters as dancing, right? He don't look like a good dancer here, right? It's pick your leg up, it's get your foot down, it's uncomfortable, it looks kind of unathletic, clunky, and it's just like, I just want to make barrel contact. And this one, he looks like he's trying to do damage. He looks like he's trying to dance. There's a lot of moving parts, but he's super athletic as shown by his contact rates, which is where you can kind of expose some of these more dramatic moves, these more grandiose moves as a hitter is when you're super athletic, you're still going to get the foot strike in a balanced position, right? No matter how many moving parts there are. So he allows himself some freedom to move. Then as we go through, obviously that's a little bit higher, but what's important to me is that's an outer third pitch that he's still pulling. So there's intent to get this ball to the pull side in the air. Typically, you would see for a guy that has high average, makes a ton of contact like he did in 2025, that he's going to take this base knock to right field. No, he's in here, 0-0 count. I'm looking to do damage. I'm looking to put us up. 2 outs. What's the harm of swinging and missing 0-0? There's more intent behind this swing. And I think that's really important to realize is that sometimes it is just as simple. Change your intent, try to hit the baseball in the air, and let's go chase it. And good things happen in terms of the power output. Now, with that, if you're a young hitter and you're like, maybe I should try that, it takes a special athlete. It takes taking a guy who has 85% contact rate in the ACC and saying, hey, man, try to hit for more power. And sometimes you see a direct correlation between power increase. And if guys are super athletic like Lackey is, it doesn't typically come with a decrease in those contact skills. So there's an intent to do damage here. There's an intent to get to the pull side, forcing a ball from the outside and keeping his posture in a good spot and trying to pull that. That's a huge deal for me in terms of what his intent is. Right here, again, you can see force feed in hands inside, let the ball get deep. If this was on the outer third, he's probably hitting that the other way, taking his base knock to right. Compared to in this one, it's like, oh, I am going to absolutely crush this thing. I'm going to get out on my front side a little bit more, go try to pull this baseball. And it's obviously translated to a lot more power. And that's grown man strength right there. Georgia Tech isn't exactly a big ballpark to get it out, but that ball was crushed, right? And there was a lot of intent to do damage on that pitch. In comparison to 2025, his home runs are more of a byproduct of line drive, focus low, let's stay through the baseball, let's let it get deep, and let's make good swing decisions. Now we have a side angle of 2025, and we'll just hit on this quick, but to go back to a little bit of what I had mentioned from the center field angle, it's more of a lean than a load. You see that transfer, and especially as that knee gets outside that back foot, right? So as he gets that knee outside that back foot, it's more of just like moving back and forth than it is actually engaging the ground, creating force and creating a hinge that allows you to release that force into more bat speed, right? And then it's just the unengagement of the ground is a drift forward. Look at that midsection here. Focus right on here as I break through this. Look how much that moves, right? So when you're talking about an elite bat to ball guy, he can get away with that. A lot of young hitters can't. And then look how late he makes this decision, right? We talk about being in a phone booth. You want to be athletic in a phone booth, but he is letting this ball get so deep that the only thing he could do is slightly be early, and that's what creates a pull side bomb. We don't have a side angle of his home run against Virginia Tech this year. I would guarantee he's making contact a little bit more freely out here in terms of getting through the baseball and allowing himself to pull the baseball. Compared to here, it's just kind of compact, short to the baseball, barrel. The fact that this gets out shows how much raw strength he has in the frame, because mechanically he's not really getting anything out of the ground. He's really just relying on his elite hands and elite bat to ball. But there is bat speed here, right? I think that's a big part, right? Slow motion, but there's bat speed there that obviously somebody had seen enough in to get a little out of, and be able to see that. Let's run it through and let's showcase a little bit of the bat speed that he has. Yeah, that's natural bat speed right there. If you can get a little bit more out of the ground and a little bit more of intent behind his swing, especially in leverage counts, you're going to get an elite hitter. And that's what he's become, quite frankly. Lackey We'll break into a little bit more of a breakdown with him, but there's a couple other guys that I want to point out and break down some of their film and talk about some of the adjustments they made. But Lackey's taken a huge step forward in the power department, which has allowed him to just be a lot more athletic and be an elite power hitter that's going to push number one overall pick because he's a catcher, super athletic, can play all over the field, and showcases both elite bat to ball and now tapping into a lot more power into his production. For the next prospect, we're going to look at AJ Gracia, who is a transfer from Duke, who is now playing for Virginia. He followed Coach Chris Pollard to Virginia, and Gracia was a little bit harder to peg down. He is a hitter on the rise because his power output is higher. Now, if you go look at Gracia's production, let's just say, you'd be surprised because it doesn't match up with the data. And what I mean by that is a lot of times for hitters that possess Gracia's contact skills and chase skills in college baseball, where they're able to, what I call, out athlete their competition, you'll see 360 average with 7 home runs, right? But Gracia was hitting 290 with 20, which 20 is, or with 15, 16 over his freshman and sophomore year. But the average left a little bit to be desired. For a guy who has an 85% contact rate and who's a supreme athlete who doesn't expand, he swings at the right pitches, the output didn't match the expectations, the data even, which is typically where you see those things not add up. So when you visually scout and evaluate Gracia, you'd be surprised to see that the statistical output doesn't match what your eyes are telling you typically, right? And so I think that's really important to recognize and identify some of the quote unquote improvements he's made. So yeah, the power output this year is going to be more consistently up because he's hitting the ball harder. His average is up, so he's hitting the ball harder. His barrel percentage is up. But there were a couple things that stood out to me with Gracia, and it's going to really come down to looking at the film than it is the data, because the eye test, the film, and the statistical outlook don't line up. That doesn't mean there's something wrong. They're all good. He's statistically good enough. His data is great in terms of an evaluation process. His film is great, but there are things that he's worked on that I think are really important to showcase the improvements he's made and maybe why the power output is up. You'll see, again, there's no direct change in average exit velocity, but there's a direct change in hard hit and barrel percentage, which I think just means he's getting to his power more consistently. Let's look at his batted ball location first. In 2025, obviously the oppo was 20% roughly, center was 42, and right was 37. So it was a lot of pull, but mostly to center field, which is abnormal for a player with the profile that Gracia has. He obviously had a very big part focus. In 2026, that's spread out a little bit more. Now, against every conventional evaluation and player development point I make and viewpoint I have, in an ideal world for a guy that doesn't have a ton of thump, right? He doesn't have a ton of raw juice, at least in terms of his power outputs. Maybe in his max EVs and his raw strength, he does. I would almost want him to pull the baseball more. But the reason I identify those things is because that direct adjustment has led to the improvements of what we're going to look at below, right? This is where the real versus feel. This is where the coaching versus the output is very important. Because sometimes to get to the pull side better, more effectively, and more, we need to think and hit the ball to the big part more, because that allows us to stay in posture longer. That eliminates top spun ground balls, which is probably Gracia's biggest thing that I noticed in 2025 that caused the inconsistencies in output, right? He was making contact, but it would be soft ground balls to the pull side. He would hit the ball hard and in the air, but it would be top spun and almost barely get out of the ballpark. So it wouldn't end up being a home run or be a double or a fly out, right? In some of those cases. So you look at his output and you're like, how is this guy not hitting 350, 25 bombs, barely any strikeouts? It's because of those mechanical things. So what Coach Tyler and Coach Pollard and them who are now at Virginia have done is get Gracia to see the big part, right? To not be so tunnel focused on pulling the baseball. And it's done exactly what you hope when you make those changes. The impact to the pull side is down, but the quality of contact is up. right? Was notorious in past years for the rollover ground ball into the shift against the pool side, right? To the pool side. Now, not only is he hitting the ball harder to the pool side, which tells me it's a lot less in terms of percentages, it's a lot less of rollover lungy ground balls, which he did a couple times in 2025 based on the film. It's also consistently in that window that we're looking for of the launch angle between 10 and 30, right? So he's barreling the baseball, putting it in a window that's very important, hitting it harder, more consistently, even if the overall output is down. And the same thing goes for across, not only the pool side, also across the whole field, is his overall exit velocity in the air is down. But the reality is he's more consistently hitting it hard, and he's more consistently barreling the ball when it's in the air. Those are all very important pieces to recognize and realize when talking about Gracia. But really, if we want to talk about the overarching adjustment that he's made, we really have to bear down on the film, which we're going to check out right now. When looking at Gracia's film, a couple things really stand out here. On the right here, we have what ends up being a home run. And when you look at the pitch location and quality of contact, ball is crushed, right? Crushed to the pool side. You would think this ball, based on this camera shot, ends up upper decks. But this is where, if anybody who's played golf, and golf has become such obviously a big sport for baseball players, whether it's while playing or not, what you know when you hit a drive and it slices or it top spins is club head speed, contact quality, ball speed, launch angle. It becomes irrelevant when it's top spun, right? Or side spun. You might have hit a ball quality enough to hit it 450 feet. But if it only goes 375, why? Because the spin of the ball matters. And when a ball acts like a 12-6 curveball, no matter how hard you throw it or hit it, it doesn't get as far as it should. And that's what happens to this ball, is even as you can see it, you pick it up and it's like, how does that ball not clear the 7th row, right? You look at it, it's what, 365 to right field there. He hit it 100 plus. Just doing the math, he didn't hit it low. It wasn't 100 plus at 8. It was pretty high. That ball should have been where those people are sitting, not almost a fly out. So again, from a data standpoint, that's going to grade out as elite, right? Hard hit, barreled, contact was made, exit velocity up. So we're pulling data up, but the actual on-field output, which ends up being a home run, but if there's 5 more feet of real estate here in right field, that's a fly out. So I make that point to say that stood out to me. When I watch this, I go, ooh, that was crushed. Ooh, that was weird, right? And this video on the left tells me a lot of why that happened, right? If you go look at his pool ground balls that he had in 2025, it was a lot of these. Lungy, a lot of forward move, reachy, out of posture swings, right? And this was actually hit decent. He kind of expanded the strike zone, which isn't something that he typically does. But when you look at this, you can see, look how off balance he is at contact. So again, he's making contact. That's going to raise his contact percentage. Good. Borderline strike, chase, whatever. Hit okay, not like crushed, but like not hit soft by any stretch of the imagination. So again, when we look at that told me a lot of his issues, right? He's coming out of posture too frequently. And so what he needed to do coming into 2026 was pound that ball off the right center wall. And even what people don't understand about thinking right center is if he's thinking right center on this ball, when we go back to the Rock Chalowski film breakdown, he's pulling this baseball. Look at his chest. I mean, you could see that from the first base dugout. He's out of posture. He's not thinking, let this ball get deep, stay my posture and my momentum through the big part, allow pull to happen naturally. he can get exposed by the low and out changeup because he wants to go get it to the pull side. He wants to force this to the pull side. You can almost see he's almost unathletic in this swing because he's trying so hard to not pull the baseball, but he can't resist because mechanically his momentum's moving too fast forward. He's out of posture too early. He's not letting this ball get deep. And just again, from the film, if I was sitting here and I was trying to make decisions for his player development track, I'd be like, hey, man, we got to get you to put this ball into right center. So let's go back to the data, right? Thinking about what we had said. Now his left field percentage, his oppo percentage goes from 19 to 30. So what's the biggest change they made? Hey, dude, we got to get you to trust that you can hit that ball hard to the oppo gap and stay true. And it's going to increase your quality of the pull percentage. Now, that's an indirect. I don't think you're coaching that to him. If he's a guy who's really in the weeds with player development, you can. That is an indirect cause and effect of hitting the ball to the other way and getting yourself in a better position posture-wise. But the reality is it's that pitch right there and that rollover ground ball and that soft hit ball that is the difference between him tapping into 25 home runs and a 360 average, which he's on pace to do this year, and hitting 290, even with elite profile and everything that comes with that. So now let's look at another 2025 home run and kind of where you correlate the two of like, hey, we got to get you to this more frequently. Now, again, you're going to realize it's an outside fastball. This is basically like if I was teach tape for AJ Gracia going into the offseason, it's like, we got to do this more, right? And rocket scientist here, right? We got to do this more. But again, when you combine all the data points that we understand about what the athlete is, and you say, we got to do this more, you're actually acknowledging something that's realistic. You're not painting an unrealistic picture. But what you can tell is look at his posture. He stays through this baseball so long, right? And that allows him to take something that's off the plate outside for a home run to center, to right center. He pulled this baseball, right? You can't do that without staying in posture and back spinning this baseball. That is the biggest adjustment he had to make coming into 2025, was acknowledging that this is the impact he needs to make and what he needs to do more consistent. So let's look at that from a side angle perspective, right? When looking at Gracia, a couple things stand out. Similar to Lackey, he looks better in a uniform this year, right? That's just a reality. The legs look thicker. He looks stronger. He looks bigger in the upper half. He looks more like a well-rounded athlete and less like a, what we used to call T-lap, tall, long, athletic, projectable, right? That's what he looked like last year. He looks like a dude in the uniform this year, which is a huge sign that the power is going to be there. But we just showcased his impact directly on an overall basis isn't that different. So there's something mechanically that's changed. I wouldn't say he's overwhelmingly added more bat speed, but there's definitely something there. So let's look at from a posture standpoint. So a couple things. We talked about being drifty, right? He was a little bit drifty on those outside pitches. Look at how he stays behind this front leg as he rotates, right? So there is a little bit of a forward move, which is okay, but he's really staying grounded in that back leg as he progresses through his forward move. And then he's not getting out over that front side. He's letting that baseball get deeper, and he's making this decision to make impact in this window rather than getting lungy and out here. Right. And that's very important to tap into his power more consistently, because he ends up pulling this baseball and he's tight in his turn, but he's not getting out and lunging and trying to get that. And he's not top spinning the baseball because he's staying through it. Right. Look at that. You wouldn't even know that this baseball is pulled based on this direction, still out to the big part, as we talk about. And this, everything is compact and over top of the baseball. Is there a little bit of his front shoulder going in? Yeah, but if you saw the center field angle of this swing, you'd understand why that ball was tucked in on his hands, which is why I think people believe they can attack him in his hands, because what he did last year is he either would have hooked it and crushed one of these dudes on the end of the dugout for a strike, right? We'll take a strike. He would have tried to stay tight and then rolled it over soft to the first baseman. But because everything is in a better mechanical state, he's able to stay behind that, stay tight in his turn, and make impact without coming out of posture. And again, that's where I talk about this is a direct correlation to a higher percentage of balls going to the oppo gap into the center field, is because he's focused on that from a posture standpoint. He's allowing himself to make contact deeper and not come out of posture too early on a poolside ball. And he's able to hit this ball out to left field and really impact the game and make that be a home run rather than a hook double down the line, rather than a top spun ground ball to the first baseman, rather than a rocket into the first base dugout. That is a big mechanical adjustment. Again, when we go back, he's not lungy, right? Is there a forward move? Yes. But as we talked about in the past, that is coming with his back leg still engaged in the ground. As long as that back leg doesn't start to leak out, right? We create that Velcro effect, right? It's ripping it out of the ground rather than gradually drifting forward and then coming out and rotating out. When we talk about using the ground as a hitter, that's what we want to see out of that back leg. So grounded, still grounded, right? That thing is, that heel specifically, still grounded. And then when he's ready to go, boom, it rips. Look how quickly that goes from there to there. Boom, it rips. So being able to stay engaged in the back leg, being able to not get this front hip and this whole front side of your body over the front side, which he did last year. Look at how he's behind that front side. That's what we call elite breaks. And again, maybe that's where the strength gains come in, is his strength gains have allowed him to brace this rotation, stop, and rotate properly, rather than in last year, because he's not strong enough in his lower half. This ends up getting leaky over the front side. He ends up drifty. He can't let this ball get deep, and it's a soft roller to the ground, to the pool side. So when we look at both Gracia and Vahn Lackey, the improvements they've made, while yes, are in terms of strength and power output from a statistical standpoint, a lot of it comes down to just subtle changes in the mechanics, refining their intent. And they both did it in opposite ways, right? Lackey actually had the requisite athleticism, and not saying Gracia is not athletic, but the requisite athleticism to take a bat to ball focused line drive to the big part approach. And I think this is such a great lesson for hitting coaches and hitters alike. He took the opposite of what Gracia was. Gracia was too pull happy. He was too lungy. He would get there and it was like, hey man, if you could just get to the big part more frequently, you'd be great. Whereas Lackey was like, hey, you need to stop getting to the big part. You're not strong enough. You're in a good position posture wise. Increase your intent and pull that baseball. Neither made overarching changes to their mechanics. When we're going to the drawing board, we don't always have to change everything. But the reality is that some of those subtle changes from a strength perspective, as well as from a mechanical perspective, can take an already elite prospect into a top 5 prospect guaranteed, getting there more consistently. And it's some of those subtle differences and some of the things that we pointed out from a mechanical standpoint that really help hitters do that.